All right, we are live. Okay, so I wanted to do this live stream because lately there's been some news about the Delta variant and the impact that it's going to have specifically on the job report. Right, we're coming out of a very serious pandemic lockdown, and the job recovery has happened at a relatively rapid pace, and yet in terms of the monthly surges and rises, you know, the variations have been a little bit of a surprise to us. And the question that's looming for many people is that, you know, um, is the Delta variant going to have a significant impact on the economy? Will it kill the job recovery that we've got going on right now? And so I want to address that question. And why don't we first look at um, some of the reporting that's been going around, because that's the basis of my channel. I want to unwind a lot of the clickbait headlines in the mainstream news and give you a proper perspective about what these job numbers mean. Okay, so let's um, move on to some of the reporting that's out there. So this is a quote from Mark Zandi. He's the chief economist at Moody's Analytics. Um, and he's involved with the ADP report. Now, by the way, so if you're not aware of ADP, they are a very large um, payment processor, and so they have a good insight into the job creation for private industry. That doesn't cover anything on government job growth, right? But in terms of private payroll, they do have good line of sight. So the report is worthwhile for us to discuss, right? So as regards to the actual quote, Mark Zandi is saying the Delta variant of COVID-19 appears to have dented the job recovery, right? Quoting, job growth remains strong, but well off the pace of recent months. Job growth remains inextricably tied to the path of the pandemic, right? And so that's really no surprise there, right? We went into a lockdown because of the pandemic, and if it turns out that uh, the, del- the Delta variant is forcing us as a nation to increase our restrictions, increase social distancing, I really doubt that we're going to go back into lockdown because we had the vaccines now. But you know, the cases are rising, and other types of restrictions might come down on various types of geographical locations. I can't talk today. States have different policies with regards to COVID mandates and masking mandates and so on and so forth. So the Delta variant is very significant, right? One epidemiologist I read said we might as well, almost think of it as a new pandemic because it's so infectious, right? And it's natural for us to wonder, is that going to kill the job recovery? Well, let's think about that, right? So, um, like I said, we've had a robust recovery. The recession that we've had is very sharp, very deep. But fortunately, we're actually out of the recession. That's according to the official government body that makes the historical record. You know, um, but there is some thought that the economic recovery shown by the latest numbers is causing some disappointment. And a lot of that might be due to the summer surge of the Delta variant. The U.S. has been averaging 150,000 new cases a day following a burst in July and August. So during the summer times, according to the epidemiologist, right, the Delta variant is more likely to spread a lot of times because people are outdoors and socializing, and the social contact helps spreads the variant. So that is certainly something for us uh, to be concerned about. So let's look at the actual numbers though. Okay, so this is a chart of their automatic uh, you know um, payroll processing, and ADP is showing slowdown in hiring, and it's this latest graph right here. I hope you can see that. You know, um, and so we're looking at about 300. So job creation was about 374,000 uh, for August. Now, in a normal recovery, a normal economy, that might not be cause for alarm, but the expectation is that we fell so far. Let me change the screen here. The expectation has been that, even among economists, that we have fallen so far. We lost a total of maybe 20 million jobs during the lockdown. And as you can see in this chart right here, if you look at this big spike right here, there was a huge spikes in job recovery, right? And a lot of economists were expecting that, that those spikes and those increases would continue because we are not going back into a lockdown. But as the data shows, in terms of the increase in private sector jobs, it has been cyclical. It has had its ups and downs, and so that itself has been a little bit of a surprise to economists, right? Obviously, we didn't expect a straight line upward, but you know, um, substantially more job recovery than we've seen so far. Of course, part of that has to do with the labor market shortage, which I've discussed many times in my previous videos. So if you're interested in that, go watch those videos. But look at this. We had a swell of private sector job creation, and now it's starting to dwindle a little bit. So again, that goes back to the question: should we be concerned about the impact of the Delta variant on the economy and future prospects for recovery? And getting down to the bottom line, ADP is saying 374,000 uh, private sector jobs. And economists that were surveyed by the Wall Street Journal were expecting 600,000 increase. So that's quite a bit off, right? That is a significant variance. And these are forecasts, so obviously they're not always going to match. But um, you know, the degree to which the ADP numbers have fallen behind or below, I should say, below the expectations is a bit of concern. Now, with all that said, you know, um, let's put these things in perspective. Number one, the ADP payment processor firm has data on the growth of private sector jobs, but they don't include government. They don't include state and local jobs, right? So that's a big chunk of employment in this country. So we should keep that in mind. And also, something has been going on between the government job report and ADP, especially for this year, 2021. Their forecast between ADP and the official government figures have been actually quite significantly at variance with each other, right? And I would attribute that a lot of that to simply the problems that there are right now in terms of data collection. Uh, so um, even as we know that the ADP private sector job report is significant, but we should also keep in mind, particularly for this year, right? Um, they've been quite a bit off from the official government numbers. So let's take a look at what's going on there. So ADP sometimes acts as an early warning system of sorts for the government's more comprehensive employment survey that comes out a few days later. Yet the two reports also diverge quite sharply from time to time, and that's been especially true during the pandemic. In July, for example, ADP said 326,000 private sector jobs were created. The Labor Department reported a much larger increase of 703,000, right? So, like I was saying, it's expected that these estimates or the ADP calculation is not always going to match the Labor Department numbers, you know, but most of the time they're within the ballpark, I would say, depending on how much leeway that you give them. Once in a while there is a variance, but it turns out that in this particular pandemic recovery year, right, the variance has been larger than expected, And so we do need to keep that in mind, right? So continuing on, um, so let's say, for example, job creation that's going to be reported this Friday um, from the Labor Department does show a decrease in job creation. You know, is that due to the Delta variant? Um, is that slowing down the job growth and the economic recovery in this country? Well, we should also keep in mind that um, you know, uh, as it says right here, the U.S. has created an average of 831,000 new jobs in each of the past 3 months. The official unemployment rate has fallen to 5.4% from 6.1%, and job openings recently topped a record 10 million for the first time. So, quoting senior economist Sam Bullard at Wells Fargo, the past 3 months we've seen robust gains on hiring. Clearly, labor demand is still very high. So, what does all of that mean? Okay. Um, well, the data for this year um, is very uncertain in terms of predictions. No one really knows for sure exactly what's going to happen on a month-to-month basis. Long term, in terms of the economic recovery, in terms of inflation, in terms of the job market, economists actually have a pretty good idea of how things will go. But from month to month, the data has been especially challenging this year. And so, if you see reports in the news about how the Delta variant may be killing the job recovery, it's certainly possible. But the takeaway for this live stream is that we don't know that yet. And I would say that um, even the number that we'll get from the Labor Department on Friday is not going to settle the issue. So I will continue to do live streams and talk about the impact of the Delta variant. But for now, I would say that don't be too alarmed about the headlines so far. We'll take a look at the job creation numbers on Friday. I'll do a live stream about that, and then I think we'll be able to come to more firmer conclusions about the impact of the Delta variant. But bottom line, right now, what we're seeing in the economy, and I've talked about this in all my other videos about the labor market shortage, that there's the hiring is very very strong. You know, in fact, in the ADP report, it showed that the retail sector jobs actually did quite well, which you would not expect if it was actually the Delta variant that's impacting job creation. So what we know right now is the labor market is still very very tight. The shortage is very real, right? And the hirings that are out there still match or exceed the number of people who are actually looking for work. So I don't think at this point we have too much cause for concern, right? It's still taking the delta very seriously, but so far from the data, I would say as an overall assessment, there is some sign of softening in the economy, but um, we have no definitive data saying that the variant is slowing down the economic recovery, at least so far. So we'll continue to monitor the situation, and I'll see you in the next video.